JayDreamerZ welcomes you to the live stream.
Welcome everybody to tonight's live stream. I know it's a surprise for some of you. I was able to find the time to jump on, and we're going to talk about, I'm really excited about this particular live stream. We're going to be talking about mud fossils, and specifically we're going to start off about humans being mud fossils, or humans, the ability for humans to turn into rock, and a lot of other stuff tonight. So I'm really excited about this one. Sorry I didn't post it earlier. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting me and, you know, wishing me well wishes and things like that. So I know some people are going to jump into the chat a little later on. That's fine. We can recover some topics. I want to jump right into it. We're going to be talking about, first and foremost, Girolamo Sagato, or the man, the only person in recorded history who's been able to turn a human body into stone, and I mean real stone, into rock, not mummification, but actual rock. And I'm going to show you some pictures. We're going to do some screen sharing and stuff like that. It should be a good time. So welcome everyone who's joining, and welcome to everybody who's watching later on. I'm JayDreamerZ, and I'm going to be taking you on an interesting journey tonight. For those of you who are watching for the first time, please keep an open mind. My whole channel is about thinking outside of the box. I'm going to be talking about some theories that are not very popular. They're not in the mainstream yet, but I believe that they will be very soon. So let's get right into it. I'm going to show you guys some things, you know, as I continue talking. We're going to talk about Girolamo Sagato, or as I like to call him, Girolamo Sagato, Mr. Mudfossil, Girolamo. Okay, I'm sorry. So, who's this person, right? Girolamo Sagato. I'm going to be reading off of a website here, and I'll screen share in just a minute. But I'm going to be reading some things. This is very interesting. We're going to start off slow. I'm going to establish a foundation for us to go forward on. That foundation is turning human beings into stone, into rock. Is that possible? Girolamo Sagato, Mr. Mudfossil, has done it. Now, he lived in the 1800s, and I'm going to read from the website here. And let me just do some hellos. Let me jump into the chat real quick. Hello to Flatman G33 Imagination, Your Heart is a Portal, Susie B, Jonah of Iona, The Trainman, and Nazim Huger. I'm sorry if I messed any of that up. So, hello to everybody. I'm not going to be looking at the chat on this video because I want to present all of the information. And let's jump right into it. So I'm going to read some of this. I'm going to go right to the screen sharing here. Hopefully this works. And it does. Awesome. Okay, so this man right here is Girolamo Sagato, Mr. Mudfossil. I will keep using that joke. So here's his picture, okay? And, you know, you can feel free to look up all of this information. Check it out online. It's all available as well. And let me just go ahead and start reading. I'm going to read this whole article real quick. It's very short. Girolamo Sagato was and is the only person to petrify human body parts. Unfortunately, his methods appear to be lost to time. Interesting. Of course, isn't that just the way it is? And, you know, as I read this article to everyone, I want you to keep in mind Edward Leedskalnin. If you don't know about Edward Leedskalnin, he created the Coral Castle. Please do feel free to Google Coral Castle and learn all about it, because I feel it's very much relevant. Both men basically learned the secrets of Egypt and understand some things. Now, Girolamo took a step further. He was not involved in mummification. What I'm going to be talking about is not mummification. It's turning living beings like humans into stone. So here he is right here, Girolamo Sagato. It says, Sagato was born in the small village of Sospirolo in northern Italy, June 13th, 1792. Growing up, he had many interests ranging from chemistry to natural sciences to mathematics. Above all, however, he loved to explore new things. I like this guy already. This love of the unknown was propelled forward when at age 26, he began his travels through Egypt. In particular, the mummies fascinated him, and they helped start his studies into preservation. Upon his return to Italy, he began writing about his studies in Egypt. After publishing his first volume of work, he ran into trouble. Of course, right? Isn't that the way it always goes? Anytime people start getting close to the truth, bad stuff starts to happen. The powers that be start cracking down to get rid of it as soon as possible. So let's find out what happened. His partner absconded to Paris, taking what cash they had, all of their research and illustrations. It sent Sagato into sadness. It would not be able, or he would not be able to continue with a second volume, and instead worked on cartography until 1831. It was then that he began to experiment with the preservation of animals, and soon after, the petrification of human body parts. If you don't know what petrification means, it comes from the word petra, which literally means rock. It's turning things into rock. Now, if you're wondering what this picture over here is, it's a table of inlaid bone, viscera, and muscle. This is body parts right here. Now, it looks to me, let me see if I can zoom in on it for you. Doesn't this kind of resemble like marble? You know, this is going to come into play a little later on during this video, but this is body parts, but it looks like what we would call marble or rock, obviously, right? Okay, let's go back to reading. Unfortunately, Sagato died without passing on his work. After someone broke into his lab and ruffled through his papers, After someone broke into his lab and ruffled through all his papers, the thought of someone stealing his work scared him, and thus he destroyed all of his writings on the subject. This is the story, right? On his deathbed, only at 44 years old, he expressed possible disappointment into this to his friend Giuseppe Pellegrini, nicknamed Pellegro. That's really important, right? Then there's a quote here. "You shall say to Italy, which I have deeply loved and still loved, that I did little, because I had no means. I would pay all my blood to get another hour to tell you, Pellegro, my procedure." Oh, by the way, I should probably give you guys a heads up. There's going to be a couple of creepy dead body parts, okay? I'm not a big fan. I don't believe in death. But what we're about to see are some of his work. Some of his work is actually preserved and is in, I believe most of it is in a university or a museum in Italy. We'll probably find out. But here is one of his works right here. I'm going to continue reading. But not all has been lost to history. The Anatomical Museum of the University of Florence has some of the petrified, not mummified, pieces by Girolamo Sagato, Mr. Mudfaso. Girolamo, okay, I'm sorry. Among them, a scalp, a head, breasts, and a table of inlaid preserved pieces. And you have to see these breasts. They're perfectly preserved. They're pretty nice. I'm just saying. But you'll see. Maybe I think there's a picture. These preserved body parts have been studied to try to find what his method was, but there are still mysteries surrounding his work. Isn't that the way that it is? When we today find out the mysteries of old, the way that things had been done, the secrets of magic, replicate it. We can't figure it out. And so it gets ushered off to a university or a museum for select individuals to try to reverse engineer, right? So here's one of his pieces of work. This is a rock. That's a head of a person that's been turned into a rock. These are, you can figure that part out. The female was examined through many methods, including digital radiography, CT scan tomography, and conventional radiography. Through the studies, a 2.5 centimeter hole was found in the occipital bone, proving that he did in fact inject something. And although it is not known what it is that he injected, the injection did reach even the thinnest branches of veins. In order to do this during his time, the blood could not have been coagulated. Let me break that down real quick. All that means is once a body dies, once a person leaves and they're dead, their body, the blood starts to coagulate, okay? It starts to rot. The blood starts to thicken up. So what they're saying is that could not have happened. These had to have been freshly dead people, or maybe people who are still alive, I don't know, in order for this to happen. This is very important when it comes to what we're going to be talking about here in a minute, okay? So keep that in mind. It has to be freshly dead, according to the people who are trying to reverse engineer his work on how he turned human bodies into stone. So, the blood could not have been coagulated, which means the head needed to be from the most recently deceased. And then here's some examples that have been saved. That's just funny, sorry. Many other researchers have arrived at methods of petrifications, but none reached the level of Sagato's work, and no more information has been found of his work. So, for the foreseeable future, Girolamo Sagato, Mr. Mudfaso, will be the only person to have turned humans into stone. Now, this is a picture of his tomb. I'm going to read what it says here at the bottom. Let me get out of the way. There, can you see it? All right. It says right here at the bottom, Sagato's tomb reads in Italian, "Here lies decayed Girolamo Sagato from Belluno, who could have been totally petrified if his art had not died with him." Now, they're calling this art and whatnot, but I think it's much more important than that, because I believe it's relevant to our hidden history. Those things that have been kept from us that are known as esoteric, or those parts of our past that have been manipulated. We all know the past has been manipulated. Excuse me. The libraries have been burned down. History and information has been shaped and put through cookie cutters and presented and given to us so that we would just accept the information as we are instructed and as we are told. But I believe that we're entering into a time that many people, many of you are terming the awakening, where people are starting to think outside of the box. People are starting to think critically on their own, to research themselves and to weigh out the information. Now, on the path that I'm on, I find that all of this information is coming to me right at the perfect time, and so I'm sharing it with you. Now, if you disagree, it's totally fine. This is not me saying this is the way that it is. I'm just saying, isn't this very interesting? I take the puzzle pieces of the grand picture that's been shattered and scattered throughout our world and throughout all of recorded history, and I try my hardest to put those pieces back together. So I share them. That's why I started this YouTube channel. Let's go ahead and continue on. No, we won't. That was the end of the article, so we're not going to continue on. So, Girolamo Sagato. Girolamo Sagato, Mr. Mudfaso, Girolamo. Okay, I'm sorry. That's the last time I'm going to do that, I promise. I had to, because come on, right? All right. So, moving on. Let me jump into my notes here real quick. So, we're going to be talking about that. Next up on the list is mud fossil explanation in short. Okay, some of you may have seen the title to tonight's live stream. Totally forgot what I put. I believe I put mud fossil fact humans turned to stone, something along those lines, right? What's a mud fossil? In short, it's something new that's been discovered by a handful of people. I believe there are going to be lots of people talking about it very soon because it's so relevant to the past and how we got to where we are and where we're going. We'll talk about that at the end, though. Mud fossil theory basically states, in a nutshell, and you'll learn more as we go, that our world was once much different, and it was inhabited by titans. I mean beings the size of mountains, that some of them became our mountains that we have today. Those beings, the titans, terraformed Middle Earth, our realm that we live on now. They are who we have to thank for, you know, much of our strange and unexplained geographical features, most notably, you know, the mountains and cliffs and really strange rock formations, which we'll be looking at as well. Now, they destroyed the world that once was because they were changing it. I don't know what was happening, and I will speculate into that another time, but I do know this. I lean towards this explanation, that our world was terraformed by gigantic beings that were termed later on gods, the old gods, the fathers of the gods, the titans. And many of you may be familiar with this concept through fiction and through fantasy and, you know, Greek mythology. Mythology is fact told in story form. Mythology is not lies. Mythology is not fiction. It's not untruth. It is truth. It's just truth told in a story form for a purpose so that it will be passed down, because us humans, which we'll get into as well, I was totally sitting on my cord here. Us humans, we're babies. We live for very short lifespans. It's ridiculous. As Doctor Who would say, it's laughable. Our lifespans are so tiny. We're talking about a time, to give you a concept, if you've seen the movie Avatar, something like that, a gigantic paradise world where everything was huge and enormous and majestic and amazing. It's fictional compared to what we have today. And what we have today would have been fictional to them back then. It was a paradise. And there were titans. And there were what we call gods, or the or what I call the elven race. And lots of other things. Please feel free to check out some of my videos on ancient Oblivion. I go into great detail into many of these topics. Today we're going to be focusing on mud fossils. I feel it's an extremely important topic to spread, to talk about, to make known. So that's the mud fossil explanation. Oh no, it's not. I'm not even done. In short, I promised I'd go in short. So there were these titans. They terraformed our world. They destroyed everything. They brought it down, and then cataclysm happened. Some of you might think back to the times of Atlantis or the Great Flood, the Deluge. Something happened to destroy most, if not all, life on the realm that we live in now. The titans also died. Everything on that world in that time died due to this cataclysm that had happened. Now, in short, the life that once existed petrified. Whether it be from technology that existed to life forms, the titans, the gods, the giants, people, plants, animals, they all became petrified. Many of them became petrified. And I found lots of evidence for this. We'll be talking about this more as well. So I just want you to understand the concept. Ancient life that once existed in a time before Sumeria, before Babylon, before where our records pick up and we're taught in high schools and junior high, where our written record begins. There was a time before that, and it was amazing. Cataclysm happened. All life, for the most part, had not only died, but had become rock. And we see the evidence of ancient rock technology, ancient rock beings. We'll see this all over the place. The more you look, the more you're going to see it. So that's mud fossil explanation in short. It's they're fossils or rocks that are in the form of what they used to be due to the mud that was washed in during this deluge. That's a short explanation, and it's mine. That's how I describe it. Now, I want to move over. We're going to get into a little specifics here. I'm going to read to you from Wikipedia. This is a very interesting article on petrification. turning things into rock, right? So I'm going to read some of this here. Let's just give an idea of what petrification is. Wikipedia says, in geology, petrification is the process by which organic material, you and I, plants and animals and so on and so forth, become fossilized or turn into rock through the replacement of the original material and the filling of the original pore spaces, like the pores in your skin. There's openings there, right? Filling of the original pore spaces with minerals. When we say minerals, we just mean earth, really. Everyone knows what minerals are. They're parts of the earth, right? Petrified wood typifies this process. That's something you're all familiar with, you know, petrified wood. Everyone gets a little piece as a souvenir or whatnot, but so much more has been petrified other than what you see here, which is like a small piece of wood compared to what used to be. For more information on that, please check out No Forests on Flat Earth on YouTube. Check that out. Let's continue reading. So petrified wood typifies the process, but all organisms from bacteria to vertebrates can become petrified. Although harder, more durable matter such as bone, beaks, and shells survive the process better than softer remains such as muscle tissue, feathers, or skin. Now, it's going to actually elaborate upon that. It doesn't mean that skin and bone and feathers and stuff like that, the softer materials, can't be turned into stone. It just means that there's a different process to that. That's all. Petrification takes place through a combination of two similar processes. There is permineralization and replacement. These processes create replicas of the original specimen that are similar down to the microscopic level. These processes create replicas of the original specimen that are similar down to the microscopic level. In regular guy terms, all this means is that the same, whatever it was, turns into a statue of whatever it was. It turns into a rock of whatever it was. That's all it means. So I want to read to you some examples here. We've got permineralization. Permineralization. One of the processes involved in petrification is permineralization. The fossils created through this process tend to contain a large amount of the original material of the specimen. Now think about it. Let some of these words soak in. The fossils created through this process contain a large amount of the original material of the specimen. So, for example, if we're talking about the specimen being ancient living beings like humans or the ancient gods, the elven race, or the Titans, that means that their DNA could have been preserved. Contains a large amount of the original material. Well, the original material is DNA, really. I mean, it gets into bigger pieces and chunks and blocks and whatnot, but this is going to play a huge part towards a little bit here in a moment, because I'm going to connect a few dots here for everybody. Let's go on. This process occurs when groundwater containing dissolved minerals, most commonly quartz, calcite, pyrite, and siderite, and calcium phosphate, when these minerals fill the pore spaces and cavities of specimens, particularly bone, shell, or wood, but not only those. The pores of the organism's tissues are filled when these minerals precipitate out of the water. Two common types of permineralization are silicification, which comes from silica, which is also really important in this ancient world. It was a silica-based world. Today, we have fallen into a carbon-based world. That old world, that paradise that once was, where it was fantastic, and amazing and almost mythical to us today. That was a silica-based world. This is very important. So we've got silicification, right? And pyritization. Pyrite, right? So two things I want you to take away from that, okay, is in order to create this type of fossil or to turn things into rock in this particular way, something that was needed were the minerals, right? Not just minerals, but dissolved minerals and water. Large amounts of water. Now, I'm going to stop right here and we're going to... One second. What happened? Oh, good. Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm new at this. Forgive me. Anyway, so large amounts of water and dissolved minerals, aka earth, right? These titans that once roamed our world and ruled everything, along with probably the gods that came after them, or the El, or the Elu, or Elven race, as I call them, they terraformed everything. When I say terraformed, they cut it down. They sawed it down. They had, you know, their means by which they destroyed everything. They mulched it up. They destroyed it all. They created our deserts and our swamps and our volcanoes and our mountains. Now think about this. You have all of this earth, and as a side note, these gigantic silica pillars that reached up into the heavens, up past the clouds, these towers made of silica that are called giant trees as we explore them. They were cut down, they were sawn down, and there's little tiny pieces, right? These microscopic pieces of the minerals that were left over were all around the realm. And then cataclysm hit in the form of water back then. Large amounts of waters. Our oceans were introduced, and it mixed with all of these minerals, all of this deposit, all of this, like when you cut down a tree, there's sawdust, basically, if that helps you out, okay? And it all mixed together. Now you've got both elements that are needed to create fossils, and to create them rather quickly as well, to turn things into stone. Sorry, I hate coughing on the microphone. I feel like it's rude. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Silicification. Hearkening to the word silica. The ancient world was a silica-based world, not a carbon-based world. Silicification is the process in which organic matter, you and I, our carbon-based world, plants, lives, animals, things like that, becomes saturated with silica. A common source of silica is volcanic material. We'll talk about volcanoes another time. Studies have shown that in this process, most of the original organic matter is destroyed. Silification most often occurs in two environments. Either the specimen is buried in sediments of deltas and flood plains, or organisms are buried in volcanic ash. So, let me repeat that, it's very important. The specimen is buried in sediments and deltas of floodplains, right? So you've got this world that's been torn apart and destroyed and terraformed with all this debris everywhere. And then you have this immense amount of water that we call our oceans today introduced. It's all mixing together and creating mud. I'm simplifying it, but it's mud. And this mud is just rolling over everything in its path. So let's continue on. Water must be present for silicification to occur because it reduces the amount of oxygen present and therefore reduces the deterioration of the organism by fungi and maintains organism shape and allows for the transportation and deposition of silica. The process begins when a specimen is permeated with an aqueous silica solution, basically silica and water mixed together. The cell walls of the specimen are progressively dissolved and silica is deposited into the empty spaces. In wood samples, let me highlight it for you guys. In wood samples, as the process proceeds, cellulose and lignin, two components of wood, are degraded and replaced with silica. Basically, your organic pieces or the organic pieces of the original being or life form becomes permeated and replaced with earth itself, with rock itself, with the minerals themselves. So let's continue reading. The specimen is transformed to stone, a process called lithification, coming from the word lithia or lithos. as water is lost. So as the water drains out and goes away, the original being or animal or life form dries out, and all that's left is rock. That's all that's left. This is how things petrify. This is how things turn into stone, right? Now, we know that the deluge came, this water cataclysm that introduced and gave us our oceans today that no one's freaking out about. No one's like, oh, that's a lot of water. Why is that there, right? That's too much water. Anyhow, something happened, and when the water receded, and especially, in my opinion, when this skylight, this burning hot, bright white light called the sun was introduced and sucks away all the water, now you're left with these statues everywhere. You're left with petrified remnants of an ancient world. Now, please, I'm not pulling up any pictures just yet. We will in a moment. I want you to use your imagination. I want you to try and use and balance your right brain, creating the pictures and images for yourselves, imagining what that would be like, imagining what it would look like, and imagining if you might have seen that in a world that you live in today with the information that I'm supplying, which is your left brain. Let's balance that out. Okay, I'm going to read a couple more here. Pyritization, coming from the word pyrite, right? Pyritization is a process similar to silicification, but instead involves the deposition of iron and sulfur in the pores and cavities of an organism. Pyritization can result in both solid fossils as well as preserved soft tissues. Now, see, this is important, and this is why I'm sharing this, because, it's conveyed to us. It might not be directly taught, but it is strongly conveyed and insinuated that when organisms die today, that they just rot away, and that's it. That they cannot possibly turn to stone, because that's the work of fiction and fantasy, things turning into stone. No, that's reality. That's things that have happened and do continue to happen. Going on, in marine environments, pyritization occurs when organisms are buried in sediments. Now, sediment, when you hear sediment, it just means all of that mud, all of that residue that's mixed with water, that's building on top of each other as it settles down. That's why it's called sediment. It's settling down. Where was I? Oh, it occurs when organisms are buried in sediment containing a high concentration of iron sulfides, rust, basically. Organisms release sulfide, which reacts with dissolved iron in the surrounding water when they decay. This reaction between iron and sulfides forms pyrite. You may know it as fool's gold. Carbonate shell material of the organism is then replaced with pyrite due to a higher concentration of pyrite and lower concentration of carbonate in the surrounding water. Pyritization occurs to a lesser extent in plants and clay environments. All right, last one we're going to read here is replacement. Thanks for bearing with me. I really appreciate all of your patience. We live in a world where just you watch a commercial and the scene flashes so many times, that we're really not paying attention. We're not soaking in the information. We're just being amused, which means to be without thought. And that's not my goal here. I don't want to amuse you. I want to tickle your brain. Okay, that's kind of weird, but I want to get you guys to go, wow, and to start considering things. Okay. Last one, replacement. Replacement, the second process involved in petrification, turning things to stone or rock, occurs when water containing dissolved materials dissolves the original solid material of an organism, which is then replaced by minerals. This can take place extremely slowly, replicating the microscopic structure of the organism. Replicating the microscopic structure of the organism, right? The slower the rate of the process, the better defined the microscopic structure will be, right? The longer it takes, the more well-preserved it is. Now, unfortunately, it's my opinion that most of what has taken place in our past during these cataclysms that have occurred in our Middle Earth realm that we live on happened quite quickly. And I believe lots of our geographical features were just carved out very quickly due to this cataclysm. Moving forward, the minerals commonly involved in replacement are calcite, silica, pyrite, and hematite. It is rare to find organisms preserved by replacement alone. It's rare, but it does happen, as opposed in combination with permineralization. But these fossils present significant importance to paleontologists because these fossils tend to be very detailed. Well, guess what? They're not just important to paleontologists, right? We all think of Jurassic Park now, with the guy who's got the little claw, the little dinosaur, and he's like, it'll get you here and here. Anyhow, if you're watching this video, you are a paleontologist, okay? Anyone that looks into these things qualifies as that. Now, you might not be very experienced at it. You're a beginner, that's fine, but you are a paleontologist. If you're using science, you're a scientist. If you're studying math, you're a mathematician, okay? Don't let the world think that you need a certificate or a diploma or a pat on the back or approval or you have to finish a test or anything so that you can earn the right to be called doctor or whatever it may be. You are those things already. So, let me get out of this. I'm actually going to go back to this cool little movie thing we've got here just so you guys can have something to check out while I continue. I have no idea what's happening in the chat. It's probably like 0 people are watching right now, which is fine. That's fine with me. I'm doing this for posterity. But I'm glad that you guys do join me and participate, especially with each other. On that note, I just want to pump you all up. I believe I have the best viewers and subscribers on YouTube. Everyone tends to leave the best comments. They talk with one another. They give ideas. So wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you all. So, what did we talk about so far? For those of you who are just joining us, we talked about Girolamo Sagato, Mr. Mudfaso, right? Girolamo Sagato was the only person in history to ever figure out how to turn human flesh into rock. He petrified human beings. And his work was lost because of pressure from the ruling class, basically. No one knows how to do it. Supposedly, no one knows how to do it. I'm sure they have detailed instructions and recipes hidden in the lower levels of the Vatican, but that's just my opinion. We also talked about what is a mud fossil. In short, it's the ancient world turned to rock. The rocks that we walk on and climb on, and the earth that we walk across today, making the mountains and volcanoes and other structures, especially those strange rock formations that no one can really describe. And I'm gonna talk about this too, because it almost offends. It used to offend my intellect. I'm not really offended anymore because I understand the way that it is and the way that it has been. So I'm not really offended. But at first I really was. When people were like, hey, how did that strange rock formation come about? Oh, it was wind and rain over millions of years. Oh, really? That's interesting. What about this one? It's totally different from that one. That one also was wind and rain over millions of... Give me a break, man. Okay, water droplets, even hail. I'm not buying that. I just don't see it. I know that that's what we're told. I do think that there's a such thing as... I totally forgot the word. As weathering. Somebody help me out. Somebody in the chat will give me my word I'm looking for. But whenever the weather affects things, yes, that happens to a degree, okay? But it's not to blame. We are not to give wind and rain over millions of years credit for carving out these very interesting and completely different rock formations, some of which we'll be looking at here in just a bit. So, as a part of this mud fossil thing, I want to shift gears. Mud is the main component here. When it talks about that sediment building up and basically layering over, you know, whatever the ancient life was to preserve it and to turn it into rock, it's mud. Okay, I'm just going to call it mud. That's the simple form of what it is. It's mud. It's the ancient world that was destroyed, mixed with the waters that were introduced, turning it into mud. Okay, now, there's a main type of mud called kaolin clay. Clay is just mud. It's a different type of mud, okay? Kaolin clay. Let me type it. Let me screen share. We're going to go back to screen sharing. I want to show you guys something. We're going to type it in here. Kaolin clay types. And we're going to bring up pictures, images. Now, look at this. These are the main types of kaolin clay right here. Now, keep in mind, this clay, what we call clay today, is ancient life. It's ancient life that's turned into rock and therefore also turned into clay that we have today. Now, that ancient life turned into the clay. This is going to play a really important part. Some of your minds might be blown. I don't know. Maybe not. It turned into these particular colors of clay. We've got white clay. We've got black or gray clay. We've got brown clay. And we've got this yellowish clay. Interesting, because those also seem to be the major race colors in the world that we live in today. I mean, we're so obsessed with that concept of you're a different color than I am. Well, let's figure out why. Let's get into where did we all come from? Why do we look so different? I don't buy into this original story that, oh, it was just two people at first and they were both white people. And then stuff happened and someone lived in the deserts and they were overcooked by the sun and so they burnt and they turned black. I don't believe that. That's ridiculous. And so some of those black, they migrated and it got cold and so they turned white. And some of those people, you know, it was really bright, and so they just squinted all the time, and then their ancestors just were born squinty-eyed. I have a really interesting theory about that one as well, and I will be talking about that in a moment. So that's kaolin clay for you, okay? This kaolin clay comes from the ancient titans that once walked our realm, destroyed our realm, their realm actually. It's really not our realm. We call this home now. But those titans died. They turned into stone. They turned into clay. And this is what we have. This is some of what we have, right? We're going to come back to this particular subject. I just wanted to share that with you. Kaolin clay. It's very interesting. All right, what's next up on my notes? So the primary colors of kaolin clay are also the primary human colors that we have today. So let's talk about the old world, this world before it was destroyed, Middle Earth, when it was a garden paradise, when everything was gigantic and healthier and lived so much longer. There were two main races of beings. The original, the first race of beings, were the Titan race. When I say Titans, I mean beings the size of skyscrapers. That might be a hard pill for some people to swallow, but it's very possible. And I see plenty of evidence for it today, including in our world records, passed down by every single major culture that's ever existed. They said these things were real. And we just brushed them off today because we're so much smarter. Those are myths and legends. That's fantasy. That's not. No, that's the way it had been. That was common knowledge for thousands upon thousands of years. And now it's been hidden from us. We have been convinced to not believe in the truth. There were the Titans, and after the Titans, there were the El. And when I say El, they go by many names. El literally means God, or strong leaders, the strong shepherds of humanity. The Al, the El, the Elohim, the Allah, the Alvin race, the Elu, the Elu, the elves. I call them the elves because it's fun. I like calling them that. Anyhow, so you have the giants, the Titans, and then you have the giants compared to us today. We're kind of tiny today. The giants were the gods, the elves, right? And anyone who's looked into Greek and Roman mythology, as well as other mythologies around the world, legends and histories, you can see that there were the Titans, the size of skyscrapers, and these godlike beings that warred with one another. They didn't always war, by the way. They actually had communication with one another and involvement, and they got along at some point. But then there was just a massive war, and it all came to a temporary close. Now, why am I talking about this? Because it's important. In that world that died, you had the Titans who terraformed our world. Oh, let me bring up something to look at here in the background. Sorry. How about that one? Okay, cool. So you have the Titans who terraformed our world. They cut it down. They shaped it. Now, I'm not saying that they destroyed it, because in order to build something up, you have to tear something else down. And that's okay. I understand that concept. The Titans came in and they did whatever had happened, and they transformed the world to give us and to leave us, to bequeath unto us what we have today. Okay? We have a desert world. We have a swamp world. We don't have a, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are very beautiful places, and we in turn have destroyed it even more. There is a reason for that. There is an actual reason as to linking why we today, especially the white race, the Caucasian race, as we call us, why we do similar acts to the Titans of old. They destroyed the world, and we're destroying the world. How interesting, isn't it? So, there were two races, the Titans and the Elves. The Titans terraformed this world, the Elves warred against them, and then there was this water cataclysm that had happened. The Titans died. Most of them died. They drowned. You know how deep the oceans are? The Titans were maybe at most 2 miles tall, okay? With varying factors. That's like the tallest that I've come across in my research, okay? Any evidence as being 2 miles high. Now our oceans are much deeper than 2 miles high, okay? The Titans drowned. They died. There's this mud mixture just rolling over everything, destroying everything. Okay? Those Titans were lost to time. They all became extinct. They died. Some may have survived, but they ended up dying out. Now, those Titans became petrified. Like we talked about, reading the Wikipedia article, you need a massive amount of water, and you need this dissolved minerals within the water, right? And you need it all muddying itself up, rolling over life, and creating rock forms, statues of life that once was. This is important. We're going to move forward now. We are left with the remnants. We're left with the remains of these things. Now, sometimes it's very hard to tell what they are. Occasionally, some of us will come across a particular rock formation or cliff or mountain or whatever it may be, and we'll go, oh, wow, that looks just like... And we leave it at that. It's just kind of a joke. We don't take it seriously. Something is scratching at our subconscious, especially our collective subconscious. Notice I said especially, not especially. I'm just kidding. You guys can talk however you want to, as long as you understand each other. So anyhow, yeah, we come across these rock formations and we blow it off. We make a joke about it. We're trained to make a joke about the truth. We're trained that way. We're conditioned to make jokes about these types of things. Let me just go ahead and bust out some actual pictures. There we go. Okay, cool. These pictures are all going to be relevant to what I'm talking about right now. So we'll come across these rock formations and we'll say, oh, doesn't that look just like? What if it looks just like because it is just like? Don't get me wrong. I understand that the first thing to come into some skeptical people's minds is going to be, well, the same thing happens when you look at the clouds and your imagination takes over and you think you're seeing things, but you're not. It's just clouds. I understand the concept, and that does happen. People may look at a rock or something or, see Elvis and a burnt piece of toast or something like that and then go, oh, look, it looks just like it. Wow. Or it's a miracle or whatever it may be. However, we should not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes we look at these formations and they look like something else because they are something else, or they were something else. So these Titans died. The mud and the waters and the floods all washed over not just the Titans, but their technology and some of the gods and some of the ancient life that existed at the time and all of the stuff that had been cut down and destroyed, introducing our lovely and wonderful oceans of today, which, by the way, are all salty for some reason. That's another video, though. So the Titans drown. They die. They become petrified. They turn into statues. Now, because they're turning into rock, much of that rock is going to break apart into pieces. So, no, we don't see 100%, people like this guy over here, totally intact, just standing there. No, it's rock. It breaks apart. You know what I mean? It crumbles. But some of those pieces did remain intact, and that's why sometimes we come across certain rock formations and features, geographical features, where we say, wow, that looks exactly like this or that or the other thing. Much of which looks exactly like a gigantic Titan that has fallen. They are the fallen beings, the Nephilim, the fallen ones, or those who caused to fall, the fellers, they might say, the rock of fellers, right? So, the Titans drowned, cataclysm came, everything became petrified. The whole old world that once lived turned into what we call our boulders and stones and rocks of today, our mountains and whatnot. So, we're left with weird things like standing stones, strange rock formations, mountains. Now, I want to point some things out here. Let me see if I can pull up some pictures. I'm going to screen share once again. Let's go back to screen sharing. I'm sorry I'm not in the chat, by the way. I'll jump in towards the end. All right, so we're screen sharing. Look at these strange rock formations. These are called Meniere, standing stones. Look how big some of these things are. Do you see this little tiny human, this pitiful little creature right there, trying to pretend like he's strong, pushing this gigantic rock? Look at these rocks. What we call rocks. We just call them rocks. We just slap a label on things so we don't have to consider what it actually is. We're content with just knowing what we're talking about instead of knowing what we're talking about, if that makes sense. Look at all of these things. They're by themselves. They're in the middle of nowhere. They're not near mountains and hills and whatnot. So the best we can come up with is we're the best thing since sliced bread, humanity. And so ancient native humans, which sometimes we glorify and sometimes we say, oh, they were stupid. They weren't advanced. They were cavemen, right? We can't decide what to make of ourselves and our ancestors. They must have lassoed them up, right? And got a whole bunch of us together in order to move them to this random, desolate location because of myths and legends and folklore and fairy tales and religious ceremonies. No, give me a break. Are you kidding me? Please, let's give ourselves a little more credit than this, okay? There's no purpose for that. There's no reason for that. That's so much effort. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of these things across our realm. Now, if it was just like, there was like 10 or something, maybe you can make the exception that maybe like people moved it for a particular reason without all of the grand technology that, we're so proud of today. I don't think so. I don't think people just moved these megaliths around for the hell of it, or because, they were pagans and they worshipped rocks and, nature, and so they just had to move the rock over here because it was better over here. Give me a break, okay? Now, what makes sense to me is that we had a fallen world that had a cataclysm attributed to it, turned everything into stone, petrified everything due to the serious nature of what had happened, and much of it was left over standing in place where it was. Now, I know you can look at these rocks and you can say, I don't see a person. I don't see arms and legs or whatnot or whatever. I'm not saying it is a person, but it was something. It was something at one point in time, and then cataclysm happened and it turned into stone. These were things. This wasn't just always a rock. This wasn't something that was cut out of a mountain and then dragged into some remote location. This was life that had been destroyed for some reason or another and turned into boulders that all happen to look the exact same. Now, I'm gonna connect a couple of dots, and I hope I blow your mind right now. These rocks, if they represent the ancient dead and where they fell, that they are petrified, turned into living statues, and these all represent beings that are now dead, now gone, turned into rock, then these are their markers, are they not? Haven't you always wondered where we came up with the idea of tombstones? I have. I think about it all the time. I think about all kinds of strange things like that. Let's take a look at some pictures and maybe do some comparisons. Why do we mark the place where our dead are with stones, with rocks? Why do we do that? Maybe it harkens back to we had a world of living things, and they all turned into rocks and died where they stood. Those are their markers of the dead. And I think that's where we get the concept of tombstones and marking the dead in like manner with the rocks. Now our dead today, they just rot away. They don't turn into stone. But we figured the ancient dead turned into stone. So let's mark our dead with the stones of the ancients. That's the theory that I have. Okay, let's go back to the picture stuff here. You'll see some interesting pictures. I like this one in particular. Especially if you've ever seen the movie BFG. It makes sense. Check this picture out. This is a rock. I don't even have to tell you what it looks like. You know what it looks like. You know what that is. You can look at this right here. You know what that is. It's not me looking at clouds and imagining things for myself. These things make sense. Oh, by the way, since this picture popped up, I want to give a shout out to other channels that are talking about the same subject and giving excellent... The next picture that comes up is... Look at this picture. What does that look like? It looks just like that. Doesn't that look like Falcor? Dang, man. Anyway, I want to give a shout out to Age of Disclosure, doing excellent work, visual work as well, with awesome music so that you can see and compare things like this. What does this look like to you? It looks like mushrooms. Petrified mushrooms to me. I also want to give a shout out to, to the Dictionary of Truth. She's doing great. And I totally support those channels that are continuing to walk their own path and share that path with others, shining brightly so that others can see them. You know how far away you can see a light? We need the darkness for lights to be, right? Lights shine so much better in the dark, and we live in a dark world right now. So you can see those beings that are acting as lights from very, very far away. Just let it, I'm just saying, let that sink in. So, okay, let's move forward. I want to share some other things as well. So we're left with these standing stones that are markers of an ancient world that has died. We get our tombstones of today. Tombstones are now born. And elves, or the god race, the El race, the giant race, not the Titans, but the giants, the god race, the Elu, the Elohim, whatever you want to call them, right? They're known by thousands of different names. The elves, for the most part, or in part, they survive. And I'm just thinking right now, someone's like, he just did that, you know. Get over it, okay? There's a reason, and I'm going to actually talk about all those symbolism and stuff in another video as well. Elves survive. The gods survive in this war against the Titans. And they create humans. The gods, God, however you'd like to see it, the gods who are left over, they create humans for whatever reason. There's lots of theories out there, right? They create humans. Now, how did they create humans, right? Every single culture, all these religions, they all admit humans were created by God or the gods, right? And it's not up for debate right now, you know, it's not about religion right now. All of these cultures, all of these religions, every part of the world agrees gods or God made the human race out of what? Created it? Did they just snap their fingers? Were they magical like that? You know, these elven giant beings that fought against these titans, right? They didn't just snap their fingers and kill all the titans. They used their wits. They used their minds. They used their education because they've lived for thousands of years. They are the immortals. They have so much better understanding and a better grasp on life and life around us than we do today. We're very egotistical today, thinking we know anything at all, in comparison to beings that live for thousands of years. Do you know how much experience that is? So, the elven race is left, the god race is left, and they create humans. What do they create humans out of? What do most of these stories say? Well, I can tell you my theory. Life comes from life, right? If you want to make life, you're going to take a part of some other life and create more life. That's how we do it today, right? We use life to create life. So what materials preserved and left over could those God beings possibly have used in order to create life? Well, we all have been taught in our school systems today that the building blocks of life are, I don't know, DNA. Well, whose DNA was left over in that much abundance that the God race or the elven race could have just started fashioning out human beings? Well, we have mud fossils, beings made of clay or made from the clay, taken from the clay that was left over that contains the DNA of those beings who fell beforehand. So, I put forth the theory, and it's not my theory, but this information is just out there and I'm reaching out and grabbing it, that some of the human beings that were created were in fact created from clay. They were created from that mud fossil clay, the DNA that was left over from the fallen ones, the fellers, the giants, the titans of old, in order to create us after their image, the image of the forefathers of the gods, the Titan race. And they created little versions of them. Now, some of you out there have already speculated, what if we're the Titans? Right? What if we're the Titans? You know, and we just all shrink. I'm not sure that we all shrank from being Titans, but I strongly think that we came from them. Not all of us. I'm going to talk about that as well. And this is where we're going to get into a couple of interesting questions when it comes to race, right? So, elves survive, they create humans. Life comes from life. The DNA was left over, right? It was perfectly preserved in these rocks and mud. The elves, the elven race, the god race, survive. They create humans, and from the mud and the rocks come the bodies that we have today. The DNA is extracted to create a new race, modified Titans, right? Modified, because they understand how DNA works. They understand that it's all little bits of programming, and you can cancel out some things, which we call junk DNA. Isn't that interesting? Junk. Most of your DNA is what science calls junk. It's not usable. We don't know what it's junk. No, it's turned off. It's been shut down for a time, which is very interesting when we move forward. So, elves make different versions. Now, some versions, they included only the DNA of the Titans who fell and became the mountains and hills and fossils and other things, okay? So, they create different versions. They have like a version 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0. They're practicing, right? And in some of these versions, they include their own DNA. Now, this is going to get into another theory that I have that I feel like is very interesting. The Titans of old, much of the time, are referred to as the race of the Cyclops. And I've talked about this in some of my other videos, right? The Cyclops, anytime Cyclops is pictured, it's not just like a regular sized small human with one eyeball. Okay, having one eyeball has nothing to do with being a Cyclops. It doesn't mean cycle-ops does not mean one eye, okay? Cycle-ops, cycle like bicycle, unicycle, it means circle. It's where we get the word circus and church, which actually means kirke. Okay, circle, it comes from kirke, or like Captain Kirk, kirke, all right? It means circle. Cycle, ops, round eye, ops, like optometrist, ophthalmologist, optimist, right? Your eye, the round eyes. The Titan race was the round eye race. Why would they be called that? Why would that be, unless there was something different to compare it to? Otherwise, that wouldn't be a feature that stands out to the gods, passed down to us in what we call fairy tales. For more information on how fairies and elves and gods are all interrelated, please check out my video, The Secret of the Elves. So, the Titan race is the circle eye race. Well, we would have to compare that to the only other major race that existed at the time, which is the Elven race, which I've broken down, and I'm going to simplify it right now. You can see the scales and all this stuff, right? The Elven race has been mistakenly called the reptilian race by many people who love the whole UFO alien thing, you know. That's the reptilian race. That's the lizard race. That's the god race. That's the fish god race. They had this silica-based skin structure, and so when we saw them, the only thing we could compare that to was things that we understand, which are lizards and fish and things like that. They were composed of silica instead of carbon. They had this sort of scalene structure to them. They looked a little bit different. Now, they're also known as the dragon race. How interesting, right? Because if you look all around the Ring of Fire, the Pacific Rim, where all of the Asian type people come from, right? From South America up into Mexico, up into Alaska, and the Inuit people, and the Japanese, and the Chinese, and the Polynesians, all around that side, they all have attributes of the dragon race, the reptilian race, the lizard race, the fish race, whatever you want to call them. I feel like that's very degrading to refer to them as that. If anything, I believe dragon race is so much better because there's some honor to a dragon, okay? But they weren't dragons, they weren't lizards, they weren't fish, they were beings that were just different. And so us, being this childlike, pitiful little baby human race, we just call them the first thing that comes to mind. They were so much more than that. And I've done a few videos on that as well. Feel free to check those out. However, the dragon race, what if they all share this similarity, this physical trait of the eyes being squinted or slanted or however you want to say it? Do some research. Try to find out another explanation. You know some of the explanations I came across? The most popular ones? Well, those people all migrated for thousands of years and it was just really bright where they were. And so they developed this trait and they passed it down. Are you serious? That's insulting. No, they didn't. That doesn't happen. Or how about this? It's cute. So they developed these cute slanted type eyes in order to procreate better, to draw more sexual. This is real. These are actual accepted theories on why the Asiatic race, I'll call them, has these eyes like this. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I feel like it's more honorable than that. I feel like there is DNA in their blood because they were one of these versions, you know, version 1.0, humanity, version 2.0, 3.0, and whatnot. And that was passed down. And it's the DNA that comes from the god race, the dragon race, the elven race, not the cyclops race, not the round eyes, okay? But there's definitely a distinction there. And perhaps that's the way that it once was. And we can see little glimpses of this. You see, the problem with humanity today is we don't ask questions. We don't dare to think outside the box. You know, we're trained to be so politically correct that we almost can't really speak. We just have to agree with one another and like everybody and not ask questions about why anything's different. Screw that, man. Question everything. Why is that different? Where did that come from? Where did it originate? Look at these statues. These are the reptilian god statues. Now, the gods had this hang up on their looks, so they decreed to everybody, to humanity, don't make any images of us. Don't make any likeness of us, right? So we make other images. Now, some likenesses have survived, as you can see here. Now, look at the eyes, right? Now, also, when we depict aliens, they also tend to have kind of bigger, rounder eyes, like those in Avatar, right? Those beings in Avatar. And I think that's probably closer to what they looked like. Probably not exactly like that, but I have a theory on the blue gods and things like that as well. So, yes, the bigger and squinty eyes, the god race, the dragon race, as opposed to the cyclops race of the Titans that fell in the war between the two. What else do we have? We're about to wrap things up. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? Why is this important? Why should anybody care about this, right? Well, you can live. Oh, I'm sorry. Time out. I just saw this picture. Another reason why I think this is because if you look, women do this with their eyes, and the Egyptians did that with their eyes. They put on this makeup because they want to look like the gods. They want to look like, or like the guy on Ancient Aliens, they want to look like the gods. I love that dude's accent. They want to look like the gods. They want to be elven because the elves are beautiful. The gods were beautiful. They were the Vanir, the beautiful ones. And so the Vanir made this little creation, these little human babies, and they looked up to them. And the little human people wanted to be like the gods. And so, we have hair all over us. Clearly there's hair right there, but we have hair, so we shave it all off because the gods were these silica beings that weren't very hairy whatsoever, mostly because they took a very long time to go through puberty, and only the very eldest of them would grow beards and things like that. But we shave off everything. We want to be smooth-skinned and tight, just like the gods, just like the elven race. And women, they beautify themselves to look more elven. They want to put the little things right there to make their eyes actually appear bigger, to give them that attribute. That's my theory on that. But yeah, anyhow, okay, so moving forward, why is this important? Oh, see that right there? You may not have caught that. It's important because the present is meaningless. It's literally meaningless. We have to find meaning in our daily loops. As long as I make it to the next loop, as long as I can get to the next lap, I have meaning. That's a meaningless life. Having meaning to your life is understanding how it all came to be. We have not been taught how it all came to be. And I'm not saying, my theories on things are 100% right and I'm correct and you need to believe this. I'm just saying that they've puked out this form of history and where we come from. They don't even tell you where you come from. They don't tell you, if you get too close into it, it becomes religion. And, we can't teach religion in schools. So they don't want you to know who you are. They don't want you to know who you're related to or why you're here or how you came about or what happened before you came here, because they don't want you to have meaning in your present. They've taken away your history. You're living in a state of psychosis and amnesia, so that your life is just fulfilled from the now, from the here and now, having things here and now, and just building your own past. Everyone's so proud of our little pictures and our little memories and this and that, but we have nothing to be proud of, nothing to strengthen us from our past. Where did we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? It's actually kind of made a joke in movies. That's a cool ass picture. That's a giant. That's a titan right there, dude. That thing's laying down. Like, what else? That's a body. Oh my gosh. Anyway, they make fun of it in movies. Like, who am I? Where am I? What am I? And they do it in that stupid cheesy voice, and people laugh at that. But that's literally what people are walking around doing. They're zombies. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they are, why they're here, what the point of even going on is, where they would even go if they went on. And that's why it's important. It takes us to the present, which gives us enough energy to move forward into the future. Now we can plan, which is what our enemies have been doing for millennia. Now we can make plans. We can plan things out. We can determine our own future. We can also understand what's going to happen based on what's already happened. And we can survive it. This is awesome. That's Falcor, dude. I love that. Gosh. Anyway, that's why I believe it's important. Now, one last thing I'm just going to say. When you read in these myths and legends and you see it on movies, all of these things, all of these beings, they're always turning into rock. They're always turning into stone, right? They never turn into a pile of wood or plastic. Like the trolls don't just, the sunlight hits them and they turn into poof, feathers, or ice. Like, it's rock. Across the board, these things have turned into rock. I'm done. I hope you guys have enjoyed this presentation. I was really excited about it. Oftentimes this information just, it hits me like a ton of bricks all at once. And I'm just like, man, I want so much to put together something in a coherent way and share it with people. So that being said, I'm going to open up the chat here because I haven't seen what, who's watching or anything. Oh, and I also want to take just a quick moment. I want to thank everyone who supported me. And, many of you I literally thank on a daily basis all the time for getting me to where I am. I started off very small. Bad things happened to me in life. I wasn't going to do YouTube and stuff. And many of you supported me and continue to encourage me. Now I'm going to be working on my book coming into the new year. This will be a chapter in my book. I'm very excited about that. Many of you have offered to help me to get things going and rolling to actually make a book. I don't know how to make it. I know how to write it, I don't know how to publish it and stuff. So when the time comes, I'll let you guys know, and I'll use your help and whatnot. So I'm excited about that. What else? Thank you to everyone who's donated. If you're, one of my Patreons on Patreon, thank you. Every month I give thanks. I'm so humbled by all of you. Anyhow, I'm going to jump back into the chat. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that many of the points that I have made, some of the things that I've insinuated, have made some semblance of sense to you. So, let me just stop talking about me. Let's talk about you guys. Let's see who's here. Let's find out who's in the chat. Participants. Brandy Brown, Candy Jones, Chastity Ann Fawcett, G33 Imagination, Gary Baxter, Joshua Dumas, Living Mirror, Reflect Dead, and MPCS84, Music of Sounds. Glad you're here, man. Shibby McGee and Trent Erickson. Also, I just want to let you guys know, real quick, I don't like to say I'm a regular person because I'm far from regular. That's a whole different video though. I've probably done videos on that. And I have a life. I have a script that I have to lead and live from time to time. I have my own loops that I'm breaking free from, okay? This is not MTV, right? This is not VH1. I make mistakes. Sometimes, like the other day, I was totally scheduled to live stream. Stuff happened and I couldn't do it, I'm sorry for when things like that happen. But all of you who have been so positive and so supporting, understanding that, hey, he's a person. Like, I'm a person, I'm a person. Or a human. Whatever you want to call it. I don't know if I'm human. I mean, okay, I'm kind of human now, okay? For now, I'll be human, okay? Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm a regular guy. I'm not a famous YouTuber. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not rich. And, this isn't my job or anything like that. Like, I do this because it's my passion. I love sharing things with people. And I hope that I can, make that what I do all the time in the future. What I'm saying is thank you, and I appreciate you. And I'm glad that you guys see me for who I am, okay? Okay, that's enough of that. Let me jump back in the chat. How do I jump back in the chat? Here we go. All right, so I want to take 5 minutes, and then we're going to wrap things up. Does anybody have any questions or comments on my presentation that I've given tonight? Okay? Nothing about other subjects, just what we've talked about tonight. Hey, you see the Kachina dolls, right? They're made images of the gods, just like this chick, trying to make herself look like an elf. Chastity Ann says, hey everyone, JayDreamerZ, I missed it. Damn it, man. Oh man. A lot of these nuggets of truth that I try sharing with people, man, if you watch Star Trek, if you're a Star Trek fan, or Doctor Who, like so many of these series that have gone on for so long, there's a reason they go on for that long, because they tap our subconscious and we get excited for reasons we can't understand. We want to just admit, oh, that's fake, that's not real, it's fiction. But no, that's why those shows are so popular, because they are myths. They're truths told in story form. Trent Erickson offers to help me out with the book. Thank you, Trent. Gary Baxter says, hey, Jay, do you believe these giants can turn into stone, or do you think that they were turned to stone due to a deluge? Gary, in short, the deluge. You're probably going to have to rewind and watch from the beginning because I definitely went into that in detail. But yes, basically the deluge. I don't think that these beings just will themselves into stone. You know what I mean? There's an explanation for everything. And so if we don't understand the explanation, we usually chalk it up to the mystical. And I'm okay with that. But I want to keep an open mind to accepting information as it comes and balancing it out with my imagination. What else do we have here? Oh, Candy Jones says Hellboy 2 is crazy movie. Now that I think about it, they have elves that turn into rock. Yes, they do. Excellent point. Oh, by the way, if anybody has any like links or videos, or pictures, so gross, or pictures or anything, go to, if you want to share, please share using the Facebook group I created called JayDreamerZ Ancient Oblivion Archive. I pull from that all the time. Jonathan says, how can you not love this guy? I don't know. It's a crazy world, right? Gary Baxter says, Jay, we are all gods, believed it. Candy Jones says, what was in the water to make them turn into rock? That's what I want to know. There was rock in the water. There were minerals in the water. There was earth in the water, and it turned into mud, basically. Okay, it's a short version. Brandon Morgan says, at JayDreamerZ, this is one of the better streams because it goes back to the roots of the truth. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Anything else before we go? The Trainman says, where do you think gold comes from and why does it hold value? That's a great question. I haven't really thought of it too much. It definitely holds value, especially to the god race of old, right? I'm not sure. I'll look into that sometime. Thanks for the suggestion. Oh yeah, Medusa, right? Yeah, we've got Medusa. We've got Lot's wife in the Bible. The Bible says she turned into a pillar of salt, right? Which is earth, which is crystal or rock or whatnot. How does that happen? You can't just say it's magic and it's the power of God or whatever. This chick turned into a pillar, a rock pillar, right? Trolls, the Karnak soldiers. Maybe they were soldiers, I don't know. But the stones in Karnak, very interesting as well. All right, I'm just seeing if there's any questions or comments about the stream tonight. What are my thoughts on RH blood types? Brandy, I'm going to have to get back to that one. Sorry about that. I will address that eventually, I'm sure. Basically, in short, I think that they harken back to the god race or the elven race, okay? Let's see, what else? Fuck the Fed says, you kind of remind me of Peter Joseph's brother who disappeared. Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, I think that's about it. So I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you got something out of it. If you want to share, you can share. I never ask people to share and like and all. If you like it, right? You don't have to click on something to like it. Anyhow, thank you so much for your time tonight. I hope you got something out of this. If you want to, I think it'd be cool if you left a comment once the video is uploaded and just let me know, what your favorite part of the stream was tonight. Like, if there was something that just blew your mind or anything that stood out or something that you had never even considered before, and if you disagree, that's fine too. I'm not really reading any comments where people are like, this is impossible because of whatever. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying, here's an idea. What do you think about it? You know what I mean? So with that being said, I think it's time to go. So you guys have a happy new year. I'll probably be doing a video about my thoughts on the upcoming year because I think it's going to be an interesting and exciting one based on my own calculations. You guys have a wonderful time. I'll see you around. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.
Be sure to check out other fascinating subjects brought to you by JayDreamerZ.